Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by. Welcome to the Foreign Account Tax Compliant Act, LNT Infotech FATCA Solutions webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. Afterwards, we will conduct a question and answer session. At that time, if you have a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You may also submit a question using the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. If you need to reach an operator at any time, please press *0. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded Tuesday, July 15th, 2014. I would now like to turn the conference over to John Bolger. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Kelly, and welcome everyone. We're quite excited to have you here with us today. So I'm with MicroStrategy, and I'm the partner manager that has the responsibility for managing the partnership with LNT Infotech. And joining me today from LNT Infotech, John Rehorst, as well as Prasad Joshi. And taking questions at the end from MicroStrategy will be Aditya Degnai. And so I'm just going to give you a very quick appreciation for both of our companies because I'm sure some of you on the line have dealt with MicroStrategy before. Some of you may have dealt with LNT Infotech. And so just to give you a quick appreciation for what we're all about. MicroStrategy is a approximately $700 million company with over 3,000 employees worldwide in approximately 23 countries worldwide. We're found in most industries. We specialize in business intelligence or analytics. And we are very, very well regarded by Gartner Group. I'm sure a number of you know about Gartner Group and their Magic Quadrant for a number of different types of technologies and businesses. We're very proud of the fact that we are located in the top right quadrant and have been for the last 6 years. And we play in the analytics area right from desktop data all the way up to enterprise and the very hot topic of big data. So for more information about us, you can access our website. LNT Infotech, our partner, good partner with MicroStrategy, very, very strong in a number of different areas. I'll tell you about some of the industries in particular where they're strong. They are a worldwide organization as well with over 16,000 employees located in over 22 countries. The major industries focus for LNT Infotech are around banking, FSI, healthcare, media and entertainment, consumer packaged goods, and others. So we're going to be talking obviously today to folks that are primarily working in the banking and financial services areas. And LNT Infotech is not only an organization that provides IT services and consulting services, but also business services, having hired people out of industry for the various industries that I mentioned and more. There are a number of awards that LNT Infotech has received over the years, and I'll just mention a few of them. Recently, they were announced by Forbes as being the 9th world's most innovative company. They have quite a number of clients in the Fortune 500 area, so 300 clients in the 500. And for those of you interested in what other services are provided in financial services, there are solutions in capital markets, wealth management, asset management, in particular transfer agency, fund accounting, and custody. So we're, as I say, very, very happy to have you here today. We're going to be taking questions at the end. And now I'd like to hand it over to John Rehorst, who's going to kick it off. And we'll look forward to your questions as we go through.
Good afternoon and good evening to everyone. My name is John Rehorst, and I am the compliance consultant at LNT Infotech. It's my pleasure today to present the slide portion of today's FATCA Due Diligence and Reporting webinar. I will be providing an overview of the FATCA regulations for the first 5 items on today's agenda, after which my colleague Prasad Joshi will demonstrate the main features of the LNT Infotech's FATCA compliance solution. Information and solution being presented today is based on LNT Infotech's understanding of the FATCA regulations and how financial institutions can use our solution to comply with the FATCA regulations. The webinar is for general guidance and does not constitute professional legal advice. Any questions during today's webinar can be entered in the chat box on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Why was FATCA enacted? FATCA was enacted by the U.S. to prevent tax evasion by U.S. persons with offshore banking accounts. FATCA has two main obligations. It requires U.S. persons, including individuals living outside the U.S., to report their financial accounts held outside of the U.S. However, the main focus regarding FATCA is centered around non-U.S. foreign financial institutions to report accounts held by U.S. persons to the Internal Revenue Service at the IRS, at the U.S. The incentive for foreign financial institutions, as the IRS refers to them as, is to prevent the 30% withholding tax from being applied on U.S. source payments. What the U.S. has recently announced is that 2014 and 2015 will be considered grace periods for those financial institutions that have implemented good faith efforts to comply with FATCA regulations. I'm going to move on now to who is impacted by FATCA. As mentioned at the beginning, non-U.S., referred to in the FATCA regulations as foreign financial institutions, need to register with the IRS in order to identify their participation and compliance with the FATCA regulations. The regulations require the institutions to have different procedures in place, known as due diligence. And the purpose of due diligence is to identify the classification of the account holder, i.e., is the account holder a U.S. person or not a U.S. person? This needs to be addressed for both new accounts as of July 1st, 2014, as well as pre-existing accounts. Pre-existing account due diligence requires the searching for the U.S. indicia, which I'll cover in a few minutes. In addition, the regulations also require a monitoring of the change in circumstance to ensure that FATCA classification remains correct. In addition, as part of that, once you've identified, or financial institutions have identified, a U.S. reportable person, the financial institution needs to report the account to the local tax authority or directly to the IRS. Other institutions that are affected include the U.S. financial institutions, as they need to determine the classification of the financial institutions to whom they are issuing U.S. source payments. The U.S. institutions, if they're issuing payments to a non-U.S. bank, they need to apply a 30% withholding tax on U.S. source payments for those financial institutions that have not registered with the IRS, which is referred to as non-participating foreign financial institutions. U.S. persons are also affected, as a U.S. person needs to file a statement of specified foreign financial assets, known as a Form 8938, with their U.S. tax return. Intergovernment agreements. As part of the IRS's plan to implement the FATCA regulations, they sort of came across some obstacles by the country saying, well, we're not going to comply because it breaches country-specific compliance and privacy procedures. So to get around that, the IRS came up with the concept of intergovernment agreements. The purpose of the intergovernment agreements is to eliminate country-specific legal impediments that would have prevented requirements or compliance based on the original regulations. The IGAs also reduce the country's institutions' burdens in order to comply with FATCA regulations, as it allows different carve-outs on what accounts are excluded. There are two types of model IGAs. There's a Model 1, which involves the U.S. account holders being reported to the local tax authority, who in turn forwards the information to the IRS. Model 1 IGA also allows the financial institutions additional time to register with the IRS instead of the June 2014 requirements to register with the IRS. The date has been extended to January 1st, 2015. Model 2 IGA countries, as well as countries without an IGA, the reporting of U.S. Account holders is directly to the IRS, and the financial institutions in those countries need to register with the IRS by July 1st, 2014, which is the past date. Registration with the IRS has been an ongoing process for the last couple months. Purpose is to obtain a global intermediary identification number known as a GIN number. It is a very lengthy process, and most institutions have actually gone through it. And really what it does is it identifies participation and compliance with the FATCA regulations. Once the FI obtains their GIN number, they need to provide that information to the U.S. withholding agents to prevent 30% withholding tax being withheld. The IRS website has actually provided some very useful functionality, as it allows people to check for GINs, as well as provides a list of financial institutions that have actually registered. So moving on now to the due diligence requirements. Start off with what is due diligence. Really it is a classification of the account holder. Classification from the point of view is, are they or are they not a U.S. person? From a business point of view, especially in Canada, this is considered an extension of the anti-money laundering, also known as AML, or KYC, Know Your Client requirements. Typically, this particular classification is performed by the financial institution that services the investor, depending again on the different business models of the different types of accounts that are being sold and fall within the FATCA requirements. Once classification is determined, it also needs to have supporting evidence for that particular classification. For pre-existing accounts, there is a requirement to search, electronic search, for the presence of U.S. indicia. Main U.S. indicias are place of birth as U.S., citizenship or residence in the U.S., as well as mailing address, and then it falls down to secondary phone number, standing instructions, power of attorney, and care of. These again are detail level, but this has been fairly extensive searching that has to be done in order to do the classification. There's also an exemption, so certain accounts fall under a certain amount threshold can be excluded from classification. The new account requirement for due diligence is effective for all accounts opened after June 30th, 2014. And this is more stringent in that all accounts need to be classified regardless of the presence of U.S. indicia, which is sort of an onerous process, and financial institutions should have procedures in place already to meet that particular compliance. The need to classify the entity accounts, IRS have given an extension to that. Entity count classifications needs to start as of January 1st, 2015. The third due diligence requirement is monitoring of change in circumstance. Change in circumstance refers to U.S. indicia being added, changed, or removed. Whenever that event occurs, the FATCA classification that has been made needs to be re-verified and confirmed. Moving on to FATCA reporting, which is the second major piece of the whole FATCA regulations, is financial institutions, either in Model 1 IGA countries or Model 2 or non-IGA countries, need to provide annual reporting. If it's Model 1 IGA country, the annual reporting is to the local tax authority based on the local tax authority's filing requirements. For Model 2 and non-IGA countries, the reporting is directly to the IRS based on the IRS published XML file specifications. The IRS has further complicated the whole reporting by having a phased-in type approach. So starting in 2014, account holder information and account balance is only required, followed by in 2015, additional information regarding gross income and U.S. source payments, then after 2015, including additional reporting requirements regarding gross proceed information. So now that I've provided a high-level overview of what FATCA is all about and the different requirements, from a technology point of view, there are really three types of approaches to comply with FATCA. Institutions can identify a manual process, which has its own error-prone conditions. They can update their current application account holder systems. If they have multiple systems that requires multiple updates, or they can go with a centralized internal administration system, which takes information from multiple application systems into a common interface. And that leads me into L&T Infotech's solution, which is a common interface and consolidates data from multiple areas. So the functionality we built within our solution includes the due diligence for both pre-existing accounts, new accounts, as well as change in circumstance. Also includes the ability to perform reporting, as well as through the interface, the capability to update the current account holder systems. So why would you choose L&T Infotech's FATCA compliance solution? We've identified some unique business values and benefit. It is a single dashboard interface view to perform due diligence and reporting. It should be an optimum way to provide compliance to the FATCA regulations. Has the capability to aggregate data from existing and separate account holder systems. Therefore, it minimizes the changes to those account holder systems and eliminates the need to develop the same functionality on multiple systems. So really it presents the concept of all the requirements to do the due diligence and reporting for FATCA is being done through one interface type system instead of in multiple account holder systems. Presents the information in a standardized common format because the data could exist in different forms in each account holder system. Facilitates a standard process to comply with the FATCA review process and reporting. The solution is flexible and can be customized based on business and operational requirements. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Prasad Joshi, who is actually going to go through an overview of the solution, its interface, and the different business scenarios that apply to further demonstrate the value of our particular solution. So turning it over to you, Prasad.
Thank you, John, for that great introduction on FATCA and providing the overall overview. And thank you for setting the context for the demonstration. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are. I'm Prasad Joshi. I'm working with L&T Infotech as the technical architect. And today, I'll be presenting the FATCA due diligence and reporting demonstration. Before I start the demonstration, there are a couple of points worth mentioning. The underlying data that you'll be seeing throughout the demo is handcrafted dummy test data. So if you notice any data peculiarities or if you spot a familiar investor name, that's just a coincidence. The second and more important point is the design of this application is considering the most generic and the common FATCA requirements across various jurisdictions. But it's very possible that your organization or the jurisdiction in which your organization operates have some very specific requirements. And towards that point, the application is really easily customizable to accommodate those procedures or those specific requirements. All right. So with that said, I'm going to move on and take you through the application overview. For the next 20 odd minutes, I'll be doing some role playing. I'll be assuming a role of a compliance consultant or a compliance analyst working in a foreign financial institution. So as part of that role, my goal is to ensure that my organization is fully compliant on FATCA regulations. So which means I'm working towards a FATCA calendar, a FATCA deadline. And as part of that deadline, I'm aware that I need to present the list of investors, the list of reportable investors to IRS in a very specific XML format by end of quarter 1, 2015, right? So for year 2014, I need to make sure that by end of December, I am in a position to present all my reportable investors and make sure that I have all the supporting documentation associated with those investors. So I'll be working within that premise, and we'll start the demonstration now. So you will see on my screen, you will see the application is split in 3 major areas or components. The top portion of the screen really is talking about various tabs. You will see a summary tab where I'm talking about number of investors by different categories. Then you will see these numbers being visualized in investor type, account type, and by country tabs. On the bottom portion of the screen, I have an interactive widget which provides the details of the investors in question. And on the bottom and on the middle of the screen, I have filter criteria and the submit buttons, which really lets me interact with this bottom grid. So let's focus our attention on the left-hand side of the summary tab. So you will see we have identified our customers into 2 main categories: investors requiring review and requests for documentation. So I know that as part of my role of compliance consultant, I need to ensure that I have identified all my investors either in a reportable or non-reportable category. But it's possible that there are certain investors where I don't have a FATCA reportable status, so the status is pending. So without FATCA status, subcategory talks about those investors for whom I do not have a reportable or non-reportable status. So as part of this, I need to ensure that I review these investors and put them in a right reportable versus non-reportable bucket. The second category is change in circumstance. So it's very likely that an investor up until last year or last month was in a reportable category, but due to change in circumstance, for example, ceasing the U.S. residency, will now fall under a different bucket. So I need to review all those investors and make a right judgment call on those investors. Let's move on to the next category, which is requests for documentation. So for all my reportable investors, I need to ensure that I have the most up-to-date documentation for those investors with me. So in certain cases, the existing documentation would have expired. So in that case, I need to send a request to these investors to provide the most up-to-date documentation. So the expired category talks about those investors. And after sending the request for documentation to the investors are expected to revert back within 90 days. So outstanding responses categorize those investors where I'm awaiting response from those investors. Now let's look at the right-hand side of the summary tab. This is called annual reporting. So this is more or less my counter, which the subcategories are reportable investors, 450 in this case, and investors with deficiencies, which is 20. And really my goal is by end of this year, my investors with deficiency count should go to 0, so that I'll be in a position come next year to present all my reportable investors to IRS. All right, let's look at the interactive grid. As you will see, the default filter I have is investors requiring review. So this pretty much acts as an inbox for me. So when I log into the application, I see that all the list of investors where they need a review. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through various scenarios, as I'll be doing as part of my day job as a compliance consultant. So I'm going to prioritize on high-valued investors, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this account value, and I'm going to sort this list in a descending order. So now you'll see that the result of this grid is updated, and I see the investors with account value, the highest account value in top. So let's talk about this grid. This grid essentially provides me details of my investors. I have got investor number, the type of the investor, which could be joint, owner, entity, and so forth. I have got account number. I have got the account type, which could be investments, savings, TFSA, and so forth. I've got the name of the investor. I've got the FATCA status, which is one of the key columns, and possible values are reportable, non-reportable, or pending. I've got US indicia. So this really tells me why this investor is considered to be a US person. The possible values are by phone, by US address, by residence, by birthplace, and so forth. Document links. So any documents associated with that investor would be available for me in this document links field. So I don't have to look for these documents offline. I can view and interact with all those documents through this application. The action column is another important column, and this lets me interact with my backend account holding system. So as part of my FATCA lifecycle, the investor will be going through various statuses, and this application lets me update those statuses from sitting within the application. So this offers really the great interactivity with my backend system, and I do not need to have another application to maintain that investor lifecycle. And the account value we talked about is the value of that account for that investor. So coming back to our first scenario, I have now identified those investors where account value is over $1 million, because these are high-valued investors and they need to take certain specific procedures and protocol to be followed for these investors. So having dealt with my high-valued investors, I'm going to move on and look at my rest of my investors. You'll see there is a filter called All US Indicias. So really this filter lets you restrict the data in the grid by various US indicia criteria. So let's look at US indicia by birthplace. So when I select US birthplace as the US indicia, the bottom grid reflects to show me only those investors where US indicia is US birthplace. As you will see, for example, I've got some associated documentation for Brady Chris as an investor, and all I have to do is select on this link, and when I do that, the application will open the associated documentation, which could be in a document format or a PDF format or an XLS format, and I can view that document. I can ensure that it's most up to date, and then I can move on. As you could see, there are few other US indicias values possible, and the application really lets you to slice and dice your investor data by these various criteria. So let's look at value for US residents called US indicia called residence. As you would see that for most part of the investors, I have got the associated documentations, but there are about 3 investors where I do not have the supporting documentation. But and you will see that the corresponding status for these investors is pending. So as part of my process, now I need to communicate with these investors, check with them, and ensure that they are considered as reportable. All I have to do is I'm going to select on the investor name. So for example, I'm going to select on Samantha. And what you will see is it automatically opens a pre-formatted email. All this email is doing is it's a pre-formatted template requesting the investor to submit the supporting FATCA documentation. Again, this is just a template, and it could be easily customized to meet your specific needs. I'm going to close this for now. All right, so looking at various US indicias, I'm going to reset this filter now to all US indicias. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see another filter which is called investors requiring for review. But some of the possible values are investors with deficiencies, which we'll look at a bit later, expired documentation request, outstanding responses, and so forth. So I'm going to look at all the investors where responses are outstanding. which means I had intimated the investors requesting them to submit documentation, as you saw just a while back. Now it's possible that some of those investors have come back and have sent the supporting documentation, either in a paper format or in an electronic format. So let's assume that I have got a couple of investors who have furnished the supporting documentation. On those documentation, I can spot their investor number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update these investors, and I'm going to change the status to show that I have received a documentation from those investors. So looking at those paper documentations, I can spot the investor number. One investor number I can find is 388 5487 48. So I'm going to key in this investor number, and I'm going to hit enter. As you would notice, the bottom grid now just reflects and filters out data only for that investor. As I've received the documentation for this investor, I'm going to select this pending section, and as you'll see that there are certain options which lets me now select various statuses. In this case, the applicable status is doc receipt. So I'm going to select doc receipt as the new status. What you would notice is an orange icon on top right corner of doc receipt row. This indicates that I have made changes to this data, but they are not yet updated in my backend system. Now, either I can go on and submit this button, or I can further identify certain more investors and make changes to 2 or more of those investors and then make a single submit request. So in this case, I choose to click on the submit button. So when I select the submit button, the application prompts me, do you want to submit your changes? In this case, I'm going to say OK. The application is now going to go back to the backend account holding system and make that data update. And now I get a prompt back saying data updated successfully. So once I select the OK button, the application is going to rerun itself, and now I'm going to see the updated result of that investor record. So as you would see that for this selected investor, the associated value under action is now doc received. All right. So moving on, I'm going to reset my filter to investors requiring review. I'm going to unselect this investor so I get back to my inbox list of investors which require review. All right. So let's focus our attention on the 3 tabs by investor type, by account type, and by country. So really, the summary tab told me about the number of investors under various categories. So this information is important for me. But at one point in time, I also want to have this information sliced by various attributes. For example, investor type and by account type. So what the application does is it provides this information visually, so that it's easy to consume when you've got hundreds and thousands of investors which are due for under FATCA regulations. To consume that information in these visual formats is very easy. So as you see, in this particular case, the visualization is called as heat map. So what heat map does is it transforms your raw data into rectangles of various sizes and colors. So as you would see, that the outer rectangle is called by investor type. So you see values like joint, individual, entity, and owner. And inside the outer rectangle, you have got various rectangles. They are determined by their FATCA status. So we'll see pending, reportable, and non-reportable. So the characteristics of these rectangles are determined by 2 KPIs. One is account value. So here the size of the rectangle is determined by account value. So bigger the size of the rectangle, bigger the associated account value. And the color of these rectangles is determined by investor count. So lower the color, the redder the color, lower is the count of those investors. So as a compliance consultant, I need to be worried about rectangles which are big and which are green, because under that category, there are a large number of investors which still require review. Similarly, we can take a look at account type. Account type visualization is again another heat map, and it now slices the same information by a different attribute, which is account type. And you can see various values of investments, savings, check-ins, and so forth, then further sliced by various FATCA statuses, which is pending, reportable, and non-reportable. Another interesting visualization or the slice of data is by their geolocation. So I am working with a financial institution which has got a global footprint. So I have got my investor base spread across the globe. And I, as an analyst, would like to know where my investors are sitting. So this visualization transforms my underlying investor data and plots them on a geographical map. As you would see various bubbles of different sizes. Here, the size of the bubble is determined by the investor count. So I would know that somewhere in Germany I've got more investors compared to somewhere in South America. Again, we have got a list of filters as we saw earlier in the investors requiring review filter, and I can further filter my geo data by various classifications. So this is a typical process I would be carrying forward, going through various scenarios throughout the year till December 2014 to ensure that I have classified all my investors into a reportable or non-reportable bucket. For all the investors, I have the corresponding supporting documentation. And ideally, towards end of December, I'm going to go and filter my data to show me investors with deficiencies. So in this scenario, I still see a big list, but I have got 6 months ahead of me. But towards end of this year, ideally, this counter of investors with deficiency should go down to 0. And I should have all my investors with all up-to-date documentation. So with that done, come 2015, towards Q1, I'm going to ensure that all my reportable investors have got the corresponding documentation, their statuses are updated, and so forth. So once I've done this due diligence, all I have to do is generate the XML file that is required by IRS. So again, the application is going to help me generate the file required by IRS in a specific format for all my reportable investors. All right, with this, I come to the end of my demonstration. If you have any further questions, please feel free to use the chat box in the bottom left corner of your screen.
That's great, Prasad. So this is John Bolger again. Hopefully everyone found that informative and quite helpful. I'm sure a number of you are facing the pressures of FATCA and have to take action on things as quickly as possible. And certainly we've been getting great feedback about the knowledge level that L&T Infotech has about this particular subject, and that the application has great value and allows people to get right into solving this and meeting deadlines quicker than they could ever do on their own. So as folks have mentioned, you can actually submit questions through the chat, but there's also capability where you can actually, if you have a voice question, more than happy to do that. So Kelly, can you jump in and just remind folks how to actually queue up a voice question, please?
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to register for a question, please press the 1 followed by the 4 on your telephone. You will hear a 3-tone prompt to acknowledge your request. If your question has been answered and you would like to withdraw your registration, please press the 1 followed by the 3. You may also submit a question using the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. One moment, please, for the first question.
So we've got some questions queued up already that I'll put on the table. So let's see. A question comes from someone about integrating data from multiple sources. In particular, they're looking for a solution that is platform agnostic. And would it be able to integrate data from various sources? So Prasad, could you address that for us, please?
Definitely, John. I mean, first of all, it's a great question because really what you saw as part of the demo is the front end of the application, right? So this really helps you do your due diligence and reporting aspect. But I'll speak about the architecture a bit that'll help answer that question. So as I mentioned, the dashboard that you saw sits pretty much on the front end, but then we have a source adapter, an extract, transform, load adapter, which will be talking to your source system. So that really makes it platform agnostic because this source adapter is not platform specific, right? It can talk to Unitracks, for example, being a transfer agency platform, or it can talk to any backend platform. So as part of that design, we'll be implementing these source adapters, and we understand that every jurisdiction and every organization is going to have different account holding systems. They are going to have different rules to classify their investors into reportable versus non-reportable bucket. So really, those rules will form as a core of the source adapters. So the source adapters will pick up your data from your account holding systems, one or multiple. Then we have the rules engine where it will filter out reportable versus non-reportable investors, and once that data is sort of formed, it will be loaded in a single consolidated database. Right, so that database acts as an input for this dashboard that you just saw. And that really gives us flexibility to talk to one or more core systems and present it as a consolidation layer for your reporting.
Good. Thank you very much, Prasad. Good. So a couple of other questions that have come up. There's one that is asking about when you change status, is there an audit trail captured of who, what, and when? Prasad, is that one for you to answer?
That is correct. Sure, that is correct. I mean, that's another very good question. So when I log in the application, right? I mean, first of all, it's driven by entitlements, right? Not anybody and everybody can simply log in and make changes left, right, and center. So the application underlying has got a very strong metadata, which really decides whether you are a qualified user to make changes to the database or not. Further to that, there will be a maker-checker kind of a concept. So if your organization has got a hierarchy where people will be making changes and maybe a superior or a senior person will be checking and validating and they're only signing off, further that concept could be sort of customized in the application. And once maker makes a changes or even a checker then signs off that change, there will be an audit trail created, and there will be a sort of another report or a dashboard that will help you view who and all has made changes and who and all have signed off on those changes.
Good, thank you.
I hope that answers.
So we have somebody who's on the technical side that's asking a question. We'll not get into too much technical detail, but Aditya, this is a question for you. Did you use any kind of SDK, so software development kit for those that don't know that term, to send email for them? And how can you make a document open from a dashboard when a user clicks on a document?
So I can't speak of the particular solution that L&T has implemented, but to do that, which is to open a document from a dashboard, we actually have that functionality available through a specific feature called Link To. So you can actually make multiple dashboards, reports available just by linking one to the other using that functionality. And the neat thing there is you can actually transmit the context, so whatever selections you've made, you can pass on to the child documents or dashboards also, all without any customization.
Okay, good, good. So for those of you that are not aware, this entire application was built with MicroStrategy, and there's very little, if any, coding that was done in order to deliver this. So Prasad, any other comments about that particular question?
No, I concur what Aditya said. I mean, this is everything that you saw is pretty much off the shelf. So there's no SDK, no custom component went in to build this application.
Good. Okay. Another question that's come up is from an existing MicroStrategy customer. Can this package run on our specific version of MicroStrategy Web Universal? Prasad?
Sure, I can take that question. The short answer is yes. I mean, the version for this particular application is 9.3, and the key feature is transaction services. So again, for those who know MicroStrategy well, they'll understand that transaction services is something that enables you to write back to your backend database. Right, so that's one of the unique features of MicroStrategy, and I'm not sure, Raquel, which platform are you using, but the transaction services is available, starting from version 9, if I'm correct. So with that version, you can definitely deploy this, on premises using your licenses.
Good. Okay, another question came up.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that is. And we made this announcement, MicroStrategy made this announcement just last week, is any user who has web access now has access to do the transaction services functionality. So there's actually no additional licenses to be purchased in order to do that.
Thanks, Aditya. That's a really good point. Yeah, for those of you that are MicroStrategy customers, if you've not heard, to Aditya's point, MicroStrategy World in Barcelona last week, we made some significant announcements about our packaging to simplify, and those existing customers get their users upgraded from what they were to the highest level of functionality, and they get system management tools included as well, whether or not they had them before. We're just looking to get more and more happy customers out there. Another question that comes up, so John or Prasad, you can tell me who is most appropriate to answer this. It is saying, is this solution market specific, like capital markets, etc.?
All right, I can take that up. I mean, and John, I mean, if I've missed something, please feel free to jump in. So as I mentioned earlier, the underlying data really, right, is the solution is platform agnostic. So I wouldn't say that it is tied up to one particular market, like capital markets, for example, because the rules engine, right, I mean, is still custom component, and the rules are going to vary from organization to organization, jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So if your underlying data has got some specific rules towards FATCA, those rules can be customized in the source adapter layer. So for it wouldn't really matter if it is connecting with a backend system which is capital markets or any other business domain really. So John, I mean, if you want to add anything, feel free to jump in.
John Rehorst here. I'd agree that it's not specific to one application. It can be customized to any application, including capital markets.
Okay, good. Another question has come up. I have needs for analytics beyond FATCA. Does MicroStrategy have a mobile offering? Aditya, you want to tackle that?
Sorry, what was the question? Was whether MicroStrategy has mobile offering?
That's right. Yeah, it says I have needs for analytics beyond FATCA. does MicroStrategy have a mobile offering?
Yeah, so all of the solutions which you develop in MicroStrategy actually become available on the mobile device. So if it is a iPad or Android device, then the solutions that you develop in MicroStrategy automatically become available there. The cool thing there is also that it's all native applications that are being built. So if you have device-specific features that would make the application more handy, so location awareness, things like that, those become available for the mobile offerings.
Okay, good. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, another question that just came through is the source adapter layer using MicroStrategy in-memory cubes?
Not really. I mean, the source adapter is something, it's a data integration layer really, right? I mean, that's something going to let you connect with your backend application, which holds your account holding information. And the source adapter is that data integration layer where you'll be writing your custom rules that will identify your customers, maybe give you an opportunity to consolidate them across various platform accounting applications. But once you collect that data, once you do basic filtering on that data in the source adapter layer, you are going to load that in a database. And then on top of that, then it's your choice whether to whether to render this dashboard from the underlying database or build an in-memory cube. So really, I mean that'll depend on your volumes, how frequently your data changes, and so forth. So again, if you have any we want to discuss further, feel free. We can connect offline, and maybe I can talk more about the architecture.
Okay, good. Another question, is the dashboard exportable to Excel and PDF?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes.
Yeah. Sorry, Prasad, go ahead.
The simple answer is the simple answer is yes. Only addition is on top of Excel and PDF, you can export this dashboard in a Flash format. So all the interactivity that you saw on web, the dashboard with MicroStrategy can also work in an offline mode. So while you're not connected with your database, it can still work in an offline mode. Obviously, with the write back functionality, it will not make any changes to your backend system in an offline mode, but you can export that.
Great, thank you. Kelly, have any live questions come up on the voice side?
No, we have no phone questions at this time, sir.
Okay. So I'm going to share with everyone. There's an email address that we're going to share with you, so I'll put that up on the screen now so to broadcast to everybody. So if there's any further follow-up, we can certainly take questions through that. Actually, one more question came up. Let me just take a look at this. Investors' documents you are opening by hyperlinking with them are stored in any shared location. So investors' documents you are opening by hyperlinking with them are stored in any shared location.
Correct. So yes, I mean again the short answer is yes. So how it would work in a real life scenario is that your workflow application that sort of interacts with external investor documents will drop these documents, be it in a electronic format or in a paper format, and they will drop these documents, make association with those documents with investors, and then those documents will be stored in a shared location where this particular application can interact with. So all we are doing is tying up those documents with the investor ID. And once you tie those two things, you will see all the documents associated with that investor ID in this dashboard.
Good, thank you. So that appears to be all the questions that are queued up. I'll double check. Kelly, any other voice calls coming through?
No phone questions at this time, sir.
Okay, good. Well, folks, thank you very much for your time. We've got 2 minutes left. We didn't want to run over time. We certainly welcome your further questions. We'd be delighted to discuss with you what your particular environment is, where you are in deploying FATCA, compliant to FATCA, what systems you're using internally, how it is that can connect to the L&T Infotech FATCA application. And so the email address that I posted to everyone is your best vehicle to follow up on that. I hope you found this informative. As I say, we welcome all sorts of questions and discussion, whatever follow-up you'd like. Any further questions about MicroStrategy functionality, how it works within FATCA and beyond, feel free to submit those to the same email address. So thanks for everybody's time. We look forward to hearing from you. Regards. Have a great day.